Okay, so I think I'm actually going to go in a different order. I'm gonna give it a try. Because what tends to happen, there's two special cases. Now, keep in mind, as we go through these today, okay, these are the same thing as what we did yesterday. They're just special cases. That when this happens, there's a shortcut you can take. So, one of them, we'll come back to this because this tends to be the one that challenges your brain a little bit more, but it's the square of a binomial. We're going to jump down here. We're going to do the product of a sum or a difference first, and then we'll go back to the squares of binomials because this one's a little easier to see. Okay, so let me set this up for you. If you are multiplying binomials, remember 2 terms times 2 terms, so like in this one, a plus b times a minus b. This is kind of like a formula. What this is saying is, notice I have an a and a b, an a and a b in both sets of parentheses. It's not always going to be an a and a b. If you look down here at the x and 5, 2x and 3, 2x and 3. Okay, what it's saying is you're going to have the same thing in both sets of parentheses, the same numbers, except you're going to add in one, subtract from the other. If this happens, it's going to follow the same pattern every single time. And these ones are so incredibly easy to multiply. They take like 2 seconds. Okay? So watch what happens here. I know some of you like the FOIL method. Actually, I don't think anybody here like the FOIL method. I don't think any of you guys like the box method. I think all of you guys yesterday said you like the FOIL method. But we're going to stick with the FOIL method for these just because it's a little simpler to talk about. So if we talk about what happens here with the FOIL method, the f would be first. So you would take a times a, which is a squared. The o is for outer. So a times negative b would be negative ab. The I is inner. So those inside terms would be b times a. Just for consistency purposes, if we write in alphabetical order, we can flip those around. You don't have to do b times a. We could do plus a times b. And then the last one would be a positive b times a negative b. Now, a positive times a negative, it's always going to be a negative, and then b times b will give you b squared. Now, just like yesterday, notice these two middle terms, the o and the I, it's a negative ab and a positive ab. The same thing, just opposite sides. What's going to happen with those? They're going to cancel out every single time. And all you're left with is the f, which is a squared, and the L, which is negative b squared. This pattern, if you recognize it, is so incredibly easy to multiply because you only have to do half the work. If you recognize you have the same exact thing in both sets of parentheses, but you're adding in one, subtracting the other, I guarantee you, I promise you, every single time the O and the I are going to cancel out. Because think about it. If you have the same exact thing in both sets of parentheses, A and B, the O is going to be A and B. Okay? The I is going to be the B and the A. You're always going to be multiplying the same things, A and B, right? Because you have an A in one parentheses and a B in one parentheses, same thing in the other one. And then whenever you do the I, you're going to be multiplying the exact same numbers, just in a different order. And remember that the criteria here, you have to have the same thing in both sets of parentheses, except adding in one, subtracting the other. So what this is going to do is it's going to make either the O or the I positive and the other one negative. It'll happen every single time. Every single time. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you on this one that I promise you, if we were to FOIL it out, the O and the I are going to cancel out. And that's the only one we're going to actually show the O and the I. Because here's the thing, we have this shortcut. Let's use it. We don't need to do the O and the I. If I recognize that I have the same thing in both sets of parentheses, but you're adding in one, subtracting in the other, I already promise you the O and the I are going to cancel out. So let's see it for this one. If I do the F, x times x is x squared. If I do the O, x times negative 5 is a negative 5x. The I would be 5 times x, which notice is a positive 5x. See how the O and the I are the same thing, but different signs? And then the L is 5 times negative 5, which is a negative 25. As promised, the O and the I cancel out. And you're just left with the F, which is x squared, and the L, which is a negative 25. So what we can do, when you recognize that here, look, I have 2x and 3, 2x and 3. Same thing, but I'm adding one, subtracting the other. When this happens, I guarantee you, I promise you, 100% certainty, the O and the I are going to cancel out. You don't have to do the O and the I. You just have to do the F and the L. The O and the I will cancel out every single time. So if you do the F, 2x times 2x would be 4x squared. And the L, 3 times negative 3, would be negative 9. Gotta prove to you, in case you don't believe me. The O, I told you the O and the I are going to cancel out, because watch, the O is 2x times negative 3, which is negative 6x. The I, look, it's 3 times 2x. You're multiplying the same numbers. Except it's going to be positive. That's going to happen every single time they're going to cancel out. So those ones, super incredibly easy because you only do half order. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, we've kind of established this pattern. The pattern when you square a binomial is going to be really similar. Okay? It's going to be pretty similar. Now, the first thing I've got to get you on board with understanding is that when you square a binomial, so you have two terms, a plus b or a minus b, right? Two terms, and you square it, the first thing I am begging and pleading you to drill into your brain, this is not a squared plus b squared. I understand what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to just square everything in the parentheses, which we did last chapter. But this isn't what we did last chapter. Last chapter, it would have said a times b squared. And this I can do a squared b squared because ab squared is ab times ab, which is a squared b squared. That's where you can just square everything in the parentheses. This doesn't work. Let's watch. A plus b quantity squared. That's a plus b times a plus b. That's not going to give you a squared plus b squared. Let's watch. Let's FOIL this, and I'll show you what we are going to get. So if we were to FOIL a plus b times a plus b, notice you have the same exact thing in both sets of parentheses. Signs, numbers, everything. It's all the same. Okay? So if we do the F, you're going to take a times a. Okay? A times a is a squared. You're going to do the O, which is going to be a times b, which is ab. You're going to do the I, which is b times a, which kind of like we did down below. Let's just swap it around so it looks like an ab, kind of like the O. And then the L is going to be b times b, which is b squared. Now watch what happens here. Middle term, I can combine together, just like we did yesterday. AB and AB, they're like terms. So you have an AB here and an AB here. You have two ABs for your middle term. And then we have our A squared and our B squared. Okay, so I'm going to kind of start developing this pattern when we do this second one. So notice, this second one is almost the same thing, except it's A minus B squared, which is A minus B times A minus B. Remember, it's not A squared minus B squared. You don't get the same thing. You have A squared plus 2AB plus B squared. You'd be missing that middle term. There is a middle term here. Okay, so if I were to FOIL this out, okay, watch what happens with the F. You're going to take A times A. But here's the thing. The deal here is that you're multiplying the same exact thing in both sets of parentheses. So if both sets of parentheses are the same, they're going to have the same first term. A minus B times A minus B. The F is just going to be A times A. That'll happen every time if it starts out as a quantity squared. So for the F, you're just going to think, well, the first term in both sets of parentheses is going to be A. So you don't have to write this out. You can just think, well, it's going to be A times A, which is A squared. Now for these ones, what I like to do is I like to kind of skip to the L. The F and the L are usually really easy to figure out. Okay? If you look at the L, I can see it. It's going to be negative b times negative b, which is going to be a positive b squared. But think about it. The conditions here was that have the same exact thing in both sets of parentheses. So if they have the same first term, guess what? They're going to have the same last term, aren't they? So without even writing it out, I should know that the L, the last term in both sets of parentheses, is going to be a negative b. So to find the L, I'm just going to take negative b times negative b. You don't have to write this out. Okay? Now let's talk about the O and the I. Okay, I can see it. The O is a times negative b, which is a negative ab. The I is negative b times a, which, like we've done the last two problems, just flip those around, it's going to be a negative ab. Notice, in both of these, the O and the I were the same exact term. Now down below, they were the same term, but opposite sides, so they canceled out. Here, they are the same exact term, sign included. And that's always going to happen, because think about it. The criteria here is that you're multiplying the same two things together. The same thing in both sets of parentheses. So think about it. It doesn't matter what's in the parentheses. The O is going to be the first term in the first set of parentheses, and the last term in the last set of parentheses, right? That's what the O is, this term and this term. But if you have the same thing in both sets of parentheses, the first term is going to be A, the last term in the second set of parentheses, there's just going to be that number. So to find the O, you're just going to take A times negative B. You're just going to multiply those two together. And then think about what the I is. The I is the second term in the first set of parentheses, which is negative b, and then the first term in the second set of parentheses, which is just a. So to find the O, you would take a times negative b. To find the I, you're going to take negative b times a, which is going to give you the same thing every single time. So what happens here, just like over on this one, we have our a squared, we have our b squared, and then when you have a negative ab and another negative ab, if you want to do negative 1 and negative 1, you would get negative 2ab plus b squared. Okay, these are the ones that take a little bit more thought. Okay, so let's try this one. When we go through these ones, we are not going to actually FOIL them out. We are not going to write x plus 5 times x plus 5. I want you guys to use the shortcut, because here's the thing. Next section, or the next half of chapter 8, which is the stuff I get super incredibly excited about. You think I get excited about math? You guys have no idea, because the second half of chapter 8, like, you guys are going to get like full force Miss B, and it's going to be so fun, okay? In order to do the second half of chapter 8, you have to really understand the first part of chapter 8, which is why I'm going to be spending so much time on this. That's so important, okay? So we're not going to actually FOIL it out by writing out the FOIL. Now, what I will allow you to do, if you want to do this and write FOIL, I'm okay with that. We're going to kind of cut down our work a little bit, okay? For the F, I'm multiplying x plus 5 times x plus 5. The first term in both sets of parentheses is going to be the same thing, right? X plus 5 times x plus 5. You're just going to take x times x. Your F is x squared. Now, I prefer to just jump to the L. I think the F and the L are pretty easy, because the last term in both sets of parentheses is the same thing. X plus 5, x plus 5. To find the L, you're just going to take 5 times 5, which is a plus 25. Okay, does the F and the L make sense? And the F and the L usually go okay. The O and the I are where it gets tricky, okay? We're not going to write it out, but I want you to visualize if you were to write it out. The O would be x plus 5 times x plus 5, right? You'd be taking x times 5. But guess what? That's just those numbers. So to find the O, you would just take x times 5, which is a 5x. And then when you turn around and do the I, you would take x plus 5 times x. You take 5 times x. Look, it's just those numbers. The I is going to be x times 5, which is 5x. So the O and the I are going to be the same exact thing every single time. And when you combine those together, 5x and 5x gives you 10x. Okay, let's try this one. Once again, we're not going to actually FOIL it out, but if you like seeing the FOIL, I will allow you to do that. Okay? Now, the F and the L are usually pretty easy. The first term in both sets of parentheses is going to be 2x minus 3 times 2x minus 3. To find the F, we take 2x times 2x, which is 4x squared. Okay, then jump to the L, because the F and the L are easy. Okay? The last term in both sets of parentheses is going to be 2x minus 3, 2x minus 3. You're going to take negative 3 times negative 3, which is going to be a positive 9. Now, for the O and the I, visualize the O, okay? The outer term is going to be the first term here and the last term here. So 2x times negative 3. Look, it's just those numbers. You're going to take 2x times negative 3, which is going to be a negative 6x. And the I, guess what the I is going to be? Same thing. Yeah, it's going to also be a negative 6x because you would just take negative 3 times 2x. The O and the I will always be the same thing. So when you combine those together, negative 6x and negative 6x gives me a negative 12x. Okay, these ones take a little practice. The second ones usually get a little bit easier. Okay? All right, so let's get this glued into page 21. This should be section 8.4. And it is multiplying special cases. So number 1, okay, let's say we have x plus 4 times x minus 4. So what you're looking for is you need to recognize which of these patterns it is. If you have the same exact thing in both sets of parentheses, x and 4, but I'm adding in one, subtracting the other, I already guarantee you for 100% certain the O and the I are going to cancel out. Because think about it, the O is going to be negative 4x, the I is going to be a positive 4x. Same numbers, x and 4, but one's negative, one's positive. They're going to cancel out. You don't have to do the O and the I, you just have to do the F and the L. So the F is going to be x times x, which is x squared. The L is 4 times negative 4, which is negative 16. These ones should take you, once you get the hang of them, like 2 seconds to do. Okay? Number 2, so we have 5x plus 2 times 5x minus 2. Notice I have the same exact thing, 5x and 2, 5x and 2, but I'm adding in one, subtracting the other. When this happens, the O and the I are going to be the same thing, because we're not going to do this for every single one, but I just want to, you guys to believe me. When you do the O, you're going to multiply 5x times 2, and when you multiply the I, you're going to take 5x times 2. You're multiplying the same things, but that one's negative, that one's positive. Anytime that happens, they're going to cancel out. So just do the F and the L. So the F, 5x times 5x, is 25x squared. And the L, a positive 2 times a negative 2, is going to be a minus 4. Okay, try another one of those. Number 3. 3 minus 7x times 3 plus 7x. Now, it kind of looks different, a little bit, because the number's first, variable second. But it doesn't really matter that it looks different. You have 3 and 7x, 3 and 7x. Adding in one, subtracting the other. I promise you, the O and the I are going to cancel out. You don't even have to check them. You just have to do the F and the L. Now, you need to be careful because you need to make sure you do them in order. You have to do the F first. You have to multiply the first terms. 3 times 3 is 9. And then you're going to jump to the L. Negative 7x times a positive 7x is going to be a negative 49x squared. And even though I take it back. Whenever we were grading your homework, I said I want your answers in standard form. If it's something like this, I think it's okay to leave it like this for today. Okay? Let's try a few more of these. Okay, number 4 says 8x minus 5 times 8x plus 5. Okay, what you're recognizing, 8x and 5, 8x and 5, same exact thing in both sets of parentheses, but the signs are different, which means that middle term is going to cancel out. So we're just going to do the F and the L. So 8x times 8x is 64x squared. The L, negative 5 times a positive 5 is negative 25. Okay, we'll do number 5 together, and then you guys try number 6 on your own. Okay, number 5 says 3w cubed minus z squared times 3w cubed plus z squared. Now, it might take you an extra minute to just double check that the pattern, but I have 3w cubed and 3w cubed, z squared and z squared. Adding in one, subtract the other. And I know this one has a lot more to it, but I promise you, please believe me, the O and the R are going to cancel out. Guarantee it. So don't even worry about finding them, because they're going to get complicated anyway. Just do the F and the L. So for the F, the first terms, also notice that the first terms, you haven't already, it's the same thing, right? 3w cubed, 3w cubed. 3 times 3 is 9. W cubed times w cubed would be what? W to the 6. Excellent. And then the L, a negative z squared times a positive z squared. And a negative z to the 4. Now, before I let you guys try number 6 on your own, do you see a pattern with the sign? So what's the sign in the middle going to be for your answer? Always going to be negative. It's always going to be subtraction, because part of the criteria is you have to be adding in one, subtracting the other, which means the last terms, you're always going to be multiplying a positive times a negative. So you should always have a subtraction sign for these ones. Okay, I want you guys to try number 6 on your own. So number 6, try 9x plus 4 times 9x minus 4. Right? You only have to work, right? The F and the L. So the F is 9x times 9x, which is 81x squared. The L, 4 times negative 4, negative, and I was assigning negative 16. So those ones are the easy ones, okay? You guys have questions on those ones? Now, I promise you this, yes? They will, yeah. Because normally what happens when we do the FOIL method, almost all of the time, I know we had some yesterday that ended up with 4 terms, but most of the time you have the F, the O and the I usually combine together, right? And then you have the L. So most of the time, when you do the FOIL box method, you usually end up with 3 terms. Here's the thing though. The middle term here is always going to cancel out. So you are always going to only end up with the F and the L. So great observation there. Okay, these second ones just take a little bit more thought, but they're super similar. Okay, so number 7. Okay, let's try x plus 5 quantity squared. Okay, so for these ones, we're going to take them a little bit slower. We are not going to actually FOIL them out in the sense that we know x plus 5 quantity squared is x plus 5 times x plus 5. We're not going to write that out, okay? I want you to understand that and remember that because it's super important, but I want you using the shortcut, which is the FOIL method, but just not writing it all out. So I'm actually, for once, telling you, don't show your work, kind of, okay? So the F, if you were to FOIL this out, or when we FOIL this out, the first term in both sets of parentheses is going to be the same thing, right? X plus 5 times x plus 5. So to find the F, you're going to take x times x, which is x squared. Okay, I like doing the F and then the L because they're simple. So jump to the L, because the last term in both sets of parentheses, because you have the same thing in both sets of parentheses, is going to be the same thing. It's going to be 5 times 5, right? X plus 5 times x plus 5. 5 times 5, the L is going to be a plus 25. Okay, so the F, x times x. The L, 5 times 5. Got that? Okay. The O. I think if you were to write it out, I'm not going to let you write it out, but if you were to write it out, the outer term over here would be x plus 5 times x plus 5. X times 5. X times 5. put this together. Okay, it's going to be 5x. The I would be x plus 5 times x plus 5. You would do 5 times x. 5 times x. That's also 5x. The O and the I for this one are always going to be the same thing. So you just have to find it once. So 5x and 5x is going to give you a plus 10x. Yes?
So when you say 5 times x, why do you say that when it's on the sheet? When it says x.
So remember, if I were to FOIL this out, and this is the part that I actually don't want you to do, when you do the O, you are multiplying x times 5. And in the I, you are multiplying 5 times x. So what's in your parentheses, although yes, you are correct, it does say to add, but in the process of FOILing, you would multiply those two terms together. Question. Okay, let's try another one, number 8. 3x minus 2 squared. Okay, once again, we are not going to actually FOIL it out. We're not going to do this right here. This is what I don't want to see, okay? I want you to show your work on that step, okay? I want you using the pattern, okay? The F, the first term in both sets of parentheses is going to be the same thing. What's it going to be? It's going to be the first term in both sets of parentheses. 3x. So for the F, you're going to take 3x times 3x, which is 9x squared. The last term in both sets of parentheses is going to be the same thing. What's going to be the last term in both sets of parentheses? Negative 2. And when you take negative 2 times negative 2, you get a positive 4. Okay, now, for the O and the I, when you were to multiply the O and the I, the outside term here and the outside term here would be 3x times negative 2. 3x times negative 2 is a negative 6x. That's what the I is going to be. Negative 6x, yeah. Which, whenever you combine them together, are going to give you negative 12x. The O and the I are always going to be the same thing. You don't have to find both of them. You just have to find it once. They're going to be the same thing. Okay, number 9. Let's do 4x minus 5 quantity squared. Okay, the extent that I will let you do the FOIL method is if it helps for you to see the FOIL. I'm good with that, but I don't want to see you doing 4x minus 5 times 4x minus 5 and actually writing it out, okay? The F, the first term, in both sets of parentheses, would be what? 4x. So 4x times 4x is 16x squared. The L, in both sets of parentheses, would be the last term in both sets of parentheses. Negative 5 times negative 5 would be a positive 25. Now for the O and the I, the O would be 4x times negative 5, which would be negative 20x. That's the O. What's the I going to be? Negative 20x. It's going to be the same thing. So we have a negative 20x and a negative 20x. My O and I together would be negative 40x. Yes?
So they're always going to be 6. What O and I are always going to be 6.
Every single time. If it starts out like this, now keep in mind, problems we did yesterday, you can't use these shortcuts because it wasn't a square root of a binomial, there were two different sets of parentheses. Okay, number 10, let's do 8x plus 5 quantity squared. All right, so for the FOIL method, how will I find my F? 8x times 8x is 64x squared. How will I find my L? 5 times 5, which is a positive 25. How will I find my O? 8x times 5, which is 40x. How will I find my I? It's the same thing, right? 40x and 40x, or if you want to just do 40x times 2. Either way, same thing, but you're going to get an 80x. So this pattern takes a little longer to just kind of understand and digest, but once you understand it, it's almost as easy as the other one. Okay, just a few more. Okay, number 11, let's do p to the fourth minus 9q squared squared. Yikes. Okay. Okay, just take this one slow. What are we going to multiply to find the f? P to the fourth times p to the fourth is p to the eighth. Yeah. Just take it piece by piece. How are you going to find the L? Negative 9q squared times negative 9q squared. Negative 9 times negative 9 is a positive 81. Q squared times q squared is a positive q squared. Now, this is what's kind of nice, is that although it's going to be a little tricky to find the O and the I, you only have to do it once. So to find the O, all you're going to do is do p to the fourth times negative 9q squared. What you want to do is put your variables together. So put the negative 9 in the front, and then maybe p to the fourth q squared. What's the I going to be?
18.
The same thing. So when you combine those together, remember the variable part doesn't change. Negative 9, okay, times another negative 9, or add with another negative 9, it's going to be negative 18. And it's still going to be a p to the fourth q squared. Okay, last one. I want you guys to try this one on your own. I want you to try 9x plus 1 squared. And I'll work it out on the board, so once you get your answer, check your answer, and then you can get started on your homework.